All right, good morning. It is 10 a.m. here. I'm meteorologist Peyton Malone. We're continuing to track Tropical Storm Nicholas. Just want to thank you for joining us on all of our platforms, social media, our website, you name it. As we're watching this tropical storm lift up to the north, and it is still moving, but boy, it's been doing some funky things this morning with regard to the center, and I'm going to talk more about that in a little bit. But here's the latest. As of 10 a.m., it really hasn't strengthened all that much. It's still at 60 miles per hour, gusts to 70 miles per hour, and it is moving north at 12. So it is still moving at this point, and pressure is at 10:02. It's sitting 45 miles northeast of the mouth of the Rio Grande River there in Texas. So it's sitting just east and kind of just northeast of Brownsville, but notice all the rainfall now moving up towards the Texas coast. Whether you're from Corpus up towards Houston, the rainfall is starting over there and still not really seeing much in South Louisiana, and we're really not expecting to see much in South Louisiana today. That will change by tomorrow, though. So here's the latest track, the new track as of 10 a.m. No big changes here. They do still have it strengthening some later today. It is fighting some wind shear, but that wind shear is in the same direction as the storm movement, so it's not going to affect it as much as it would if it was going against it. Could still become a Cat 1. That's not out of the question. A low-wind hurricane making landfall just to the east and up the coast of Corpus Christi, all the way getting close towards, not quite to Galveston, but that is close to the cone, and then moving in, weakening quickly, and then there it is, getting up towards Houston by tonight. The rain will start there tonight, but the center will pass there later tomorrow, and then there it is weakening but moving through Louisiana. And of course, with this type of track, it keeps all of southeast Texas, South Louisiana on the wet side, the dirty side of the system. So as long as we're to the east and kind of under it, we're going to see some rainfall from it. And that will happen mainly Tuesday, Wednesday for Louisiana. Now, the tropical storm warnings in the orange color there and the kind of this pink purple color you see outlined, that's a hurricane watch. And the reason the hurricane watch has been issued is because, yes, it could strengthen to a very minimal hurricane, a Category 1 with maybe winds of 75 miles per hour. And that extends all the way nearly up to Galveston there, not quite, but nearly to Galveston. So if you're watching us in Houston or Galveston, the hurricane conditions will be mainly right there along the coast if it does become a hurricane, and it will be confined very close to the center. We're not talking about widespread hurricane conditions for the Texas coast, but very near where it does make landfall. The rest of you, yes, tropical storm force winds, 30, 40, 50, 60 miles an hour. Now, this is what we've been looking at, and it's been doing what we call erratic motion, and that's because the center has been trying to reform, and the center is reforming, and that's very typical in a weak system that is fighting wind shear. And what this tells us, you notice this morning, it looked like it almost stalled, but what was happening here was the old center was dissipating and a new center was taking hold, and that's why you see this dramatic sharp shoot to the north very, very quickly. So this will continue to move to the north. It looks like that new center is probably forming maybe even a little bit further north than where it's being shown right now with this icon. Maybe more so right in here's where that new center is actually forming, and this is going to pull on that old center, and if it can reform, it would probably be somewhere in here lifting up to the north. So while we are seeing a new center relocation, it does not look like it's going to have any big changes on the forecast at this point, especially for Louisiana and even into Texas. This is mainly going to be a rain system for most people. This is going to be a flooding threat for a lot of areas. So main risk is going to be the flooding potential from the heavy rain. It's going to slow down a bit as it moves inland, and that means we'll be watching for some flooding rains. Anywhere you see in these orange colors is where you could definitely pick up some high totals. And also notice, I drew the cone on here to show you that the impacts extend well east and away from the cone. Remember, the cone only tells you where the center goes. It tells you nothing about where the impacts and the most significant impacts could be. Also, we always say don't focus on the category. Reason for that is because this could be a tropical storm and it could cause big problems for some people with flooding. So zoom in here on Louisiana. Anywhere you see these oranges and you start to get in these brighter colors up the scale here, you're talking 7+, 10+ inches of rainfall. Now that is more likely going to happen really west of Baton Rouge, from Lafayette to Lake Charles towards Beaumont and Houston. That's where you're most likely to see rain totals over 10 inches, maybe even 15 in a few spots. Now, as you get into southeast Louisiana, we do still have that potential to pick up rainfall, heavy rainfall and high totals, but it's going to be more isolated in nature. We're not anticipating a widespread flooding event across the entire area, but it is possible that some of these bands that move on through Tuesday and Wednesday do produce some flooding rainfall and could produce rain over 7 inches. Now, if that rain falls, 7 inches falls over 2 days, no big deal. If it falls in 3 or 4 or 5 hours, then you've got flooding problems. And that's just something we're going to have to watch is how fast is that rain falling and adding up. Some models do show some pretty big totals up here on the North Shore, perhaps by Tuesday and into really Wednesday. And other models show as you get closer to the coast, probably not picking up much rainfall because you're a bit further from the center. Remember, when the storm is in Louisiana, it's going to be up here. So the further north you go, the closer you're going to be to that center, whereas the further south you go, the further away you were going to be. So there is that potential that we do see some pretty heavy rainfall in some portions of our area, and everyone has that opportunity to see that rain. It's just not expected to be widespread, but yes, you do have that chance, so we'll be watching that closely for you. Now let me time it out for you, give you an idea on when some of that heavier rain could start. This is this afternoon and this evening. We will see some showers, but this is associated with kind of the outer moisture plume that is being thrown up in our area, not really associated with the direct circulation and core of Nicholas, which is, there it is, making landfall. This has it making landfall north of Corpus Christi, in between Corpus and Galveston here, as a maybe Category 1 hurricane, not out of the question. But notice here comes the rain. So if you're watching this in Houston or Galveston down here, and if you've evacuated, the heavy rain will start this afternoon and really later this afternoon and evening. It will be heaviest in Houston through the overnight hours. This is going to be a flooding event for Houston at nighttime. That's the worst. Is when you've got the flooding at night. So just keep that in mind. You don't want to be on the roads in Houston tonight. Same thing if you're traveling along the interstate from Houston to Beaumont to Lake Charles. Tonight's probably not going to be a good time for it, and even tomorrow morning it's still going to be quite wet. Then as we go into tomorrow afternoon, this is lunchtime. The rainfall really spreading up over south and southwest, south central Louisiana, even up towards Alexandria, and then continue to spread up over the area. So we'll probably start tomorrow morning off relatively calm here in southeast Louisiana with just a few showers, but the better chance of rain will come late in the day and into Tuesday night going into Wednesday. So with that storm just very slowly moving through Louisiana, we're going to have rain around on and off through Tuesday and all the way through Wednesday. There are going to be breaks in the rainfall. Let me make that clear. It looks like there's going to be plenty of breaks here and there, but at times, if we get any of these bands that train over the same area, line up north to south and move north to south or northeast to southwest, that's where you have your flooding problem. Is that going to happen everywhere? No, but it is possible that it happens over parts of our viewing area. So we're trying to highlight that risk of there are probably going to be some areas that see some flooding. Now, as we go through Wednesday afternoon, Wednesday evening, I think it starts to wind on down, and the worst of it's out of here by Wednesday night with just some lingering showers and storms on Thursday. So here's your flooding risk. For today, the flooding risk, we're not really concerned with flooding in southeast Louisiana. As you get into Texas, that's where you got big problems, especially later this afternoon into tonight. Anywhere you see this pink, really just north of Corpus going up towards Galveston, that's where you could see very significant flooding. It's quite rare that we have a high risk for flooding, and they have issued that down in this area. Now, Houston's on the verge of, the metro is kind of on the edge of that, so Houston's flooding threat will be most prominent tonight and tomorrow morning. Don't be on the roads down here in this area tonight. It's just too dangerous. Now, by tomorrow, things will start to improve in Texas, but then it'll start to move to Louisiana. And really tomorrow morning and afternoon, I think the flooding threat will be Lake Charles, Lafayette, and getting close to Baton Rouge, Morgan City. But really down here in southwest Louisiana is where the flooding threat is going to be highest tomorrow afternoon. Now, tomorrow night into Wednesday is when that flooding threat will increase across southeast Louisiana and into portions of South Mississippi. Anywhere you see the reds here, that's a moderate risk, which just tells us that there's a greater chance than usual that you will see some areas of flooding, flash flooding, river flooding as we go through Tuesday night and Wednesday, and then by Thursday, things will really start to improve across the area. So this is going to be a rain event. Even if this does become a hurricane, the hurricane force winds are going to be right there near the Texas coast where it makes landfall. That's it. The big story is going to be rainfall for the Houston metro and parts of Louisiana more than likely. So the rain threat is the highest problem here, the main problem. Is there going to be some coastal flooding and storm surge? Yes, mainly towards Texas. They could see some 3 to 5 feet of storm surge rise near the center and east of it up the Texas coast. Here in Louisiana, the storm surge is not going to be tremendously impactful. Tides are going to go up, yes. Tides will be highest here Wednesday and Thursday with a strong southerly wind or with a persistent southerly wind. So tides will be a little higher than normal, not a big deal. Winds are not going to be a big deal. Maybe gusting 25, 35 miles an hour with any of those bands that move through, and most of the time we would not be worried about that. But remember, we've got a lot of blue tarps on roofs. Hopefully they're secured properly. If they're not, they could very well blow off in a 25, 35 mile per hour wind gust. Also tree limbs. I was walking through the neighborhood the other day. There was big branches just dangling within these big oak trees, or even still laying on power lines that was holding these big branches up. and you know, 25, 35 miles an hour winds could certainly ruffle those around. So we will have to watch out for that. I hope we don't see any power outages, but if we do, it would be associated with probably remaining tree limbs and debris and things like that. So we'll watch it. Another thing we'll watch for, isolated tornadoes. We're on the east side, we're on the dirty side of a landfalling system. We're going to get some outer bands. It's inevitable. One or two is probably going to try to rotate, and we can't rule out some tornado warnings here and there. That'll start. That could happen tomorrow, that could happen tonight, tomorrow, all the way through Wednesday into Thursday. The threat's not tremendously high, but it is there. So rainfall and an isolated tornado threat are our main concerns. The wind and tide, you know, relative to a major hurricane, they're not going to be a big deal at all, but with all the infrastructure problems we still have with blue tarps and things like that, the winds of 35-mile-per-hour gusts, that's the last thing we need down here. So the main impacts from this for southeast Louisiana are going to be on Tuesday and Wednesday, and really I think late Tuesday through Wednesday are going to be our main impacts. There are going to be breaks in the rain. It's not going to rain continuously the entire time, it doesn't look like, but when it is raining, it could be very heavy. These are tropical downpours. They dump rainfall very quickly, and if you get a training effect, then you have problems. So that is why the flooding risk is our main concern through Wednesday. Thursday, we still got some rain around, it looks like, with some lingering moisture. And then Friday, rain chances will be even lower. So we'll see some improvements by Thursday with just still some rain in the area. And then as we go into the weekend, we've still got some showers and thunderstorms across our area. So your 7-day forecast, I'll leave you with this. We are going to be watching the highest or main impacts from this system in Texas today and tonight. Tomorrow and Wednesday, it'll be in Louisiana and parts of Mississippi on Wednesday. Thursday, Nicholas is weakened, it's gone. We've still got some lingering moisture showers and storms continuing through the area as we go into the end of the weekend, and we'll just continue to watch the rain chances, but not really associated with Nicholas. So overall, the impacts really have not changed with this. This is going to be a big rain event. Recap really quick on just Nicholas and its latest as of 10 a.m. if you're just clicking on the app or turning on Facebook or YouTube. It's still a tropical storm. It's had some center relocations. That's a sign of a tropical storm that's fighting a little bit of wind shear. Nothing out of the norm here with a weak one. So this thing's been jumping around a bit. It's going to be moving north. It's moving still at 12, but it will slow down as it moves inland tonight. It'll make landfall somewhere between Corpus and Galveston later this evening into tonight. Could be a Category 1 hurricane, and then it will weaken very quickly once it's in Texas and then start to make that northeast turn up towards Houston and into Louisiana by tomorrow and Wednesday. And that's why the flooding threat's so high. You've got this slowing down storm that's keeping most of the area on the dirty side. So this means flooding threat from Houston all the way through parts of South Louisiana. So we're going to leave you with that. This was the 10 a.m. advisory. Of course, we get our next one at 1 p.m. and that won't have a new track, but it'll give us an idea of if it's strengthening and things like that. The hurricane hunters are in there right now checking it out. And the next track update will be at 4 p.m. Right now, we don't expect any significant changes, mainly just a big rain event for a lot of people here along the